Oh, hey, I think here we are, live streaming. Hi to you, Talib. Here we are. So, welcome to everyone, huh? Welcome to this live streaming. So, welcome to everyone, huh? Welcome to this live streaming. So, welcome to everyone, huh? Welcome to this live streaming. So, welcome to everyone, huh? Welcome to this live streaming. So, welcome to everyone, huh? Welcome to this live streaming. I think we might be stuck in some way, huh? It's just repeating itself, huh?
Oh, it kicked in, so that's
Yeah.
okay. It's like
You
a
you
now we're
hear?
good.
Yeah.
Now try again.
Aha, okay. So, hey, welcome to everyone. My name is Abigail, and here we are with Talib. Really want to welcome all of you to this live event that we are calling Facing the Pain of Exclusion. And we wanted to really work with this theme and discuss it and open it up and welcome your questions, welcome you into this arena. This particular theme is close to my heart. Of course, I let Talib speak for himself, but it's very close to my heart for a number of reasons. And I think the pain of exclusion is something we all can relate to. And it is also an incredibly interesting theme that is worked with in the path of love. So some of you may have done the path of love, and some of you might just be coming here and having an idea of maybe what happens in the path of love. So we wanted to pull out a theme that would actually allow us to address everyday issues and also give a taste of what Path of Love is about, which is a beautiful 7-day process, and it happens globally. And Talib and I will be leading a process in the UK in March. And so we wanted to just give a little intro and some understanding and really invite you all in and have, if you have questions, to fire away. So, hey, Talib, you want to also say something, huh?
Yeah, welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And I've been looking forward to today for some weeks now when we decided to do this. And I find to be together with you, Avi, is always a pleasure and a joy. And so I'm really wonderful to hang out with you this hour. And
Yeah.
and and as you and I have spoken before on this theme of underneath we call it the pain of separation, but exclusion, of feeling the pain of exclusion and how on a deep level we all it bonds us in a way as humans. It's really beyond our nationality, our political view, our race, our preferences, our culture. It is something that as humans we all pass through and experience on such a deep level. And I just think like diving into that theme is such a important inquiry, especially today on the planet where we really face serious separation on so many levels around us. And from the being separated from the planet, from political, from war, from geographical, I mean, it's such a moment in time. So it feels so appropriate in many ways to open this thing because it affects us all so deeply, and not just on the external from reading what's in the papers or reading what's on the in the on the online, but what's happening in our own house, in our relationships, in our families, in our relational fields around us, and even deeper inside ourselves, how we relate with ourselves and connect with ourselves on the most intimate level within our sense of self, that we can experience the phenomenon of being separate or isolated. So it's a privilege to talk about it because I really feel like it is so current. It's so present for all of us.
It's so true. It runs through many of the themes that both you and I work with people on a daily basis. And just today, I was working with somebody who was bringing the issue and the pain of exclusion. And it's so, I think, however many billions we are on the planet, it is so unique to each one of us. At the same time, it has the universal theme. And I think opening it up and recognizing that on the general level, the exclusion can be, as you said, color, race, culture, finances, being a mother, not being a mother, being a father, not being a father, gender, am I queer, am I, whatever it might be. In those pockets, in those tribes, there is this drive in all of us to want to belong. There's a drive to find a tribe, to find a community, an organization, which gives us some sense of an inner feeling that actually we have a place. And I'm watching more and more how most of us find a unique way of being special in order to find their own niche. And on some level, there's as you said, there are levels. There's the layer on the outside of what do I present to the world so that actually I'm accepted, I'm validated, I'm acknowledged. But often what we present to the world also creates the separation from our own inner self. And that separation is another layer from our personal persona that we put out to the world and who we really are at a core level. And as we were speaking, we wanted to address that part of us that is out in the world, because you put a persona out there, and let's say I am a person of color. So I find a tribe and all of my people are people of color. But even within my tribe, because I have my own unique subjective disconnection and separation, I actually still feel an aloneness, you know? And so I think one of the things that's beautiful about addressing this is to see all the layers and levels, because many of us strive all of our life to be in a tribe where we feel we belong. We get there and we realize actually that's not it. And that's what I love about the path of love, because we go and we expose that piece. We expose the mask of what we've created. And in that exposure, we get to realize there's another layer of pain, of exclusion, of separation, which is more personal, more subjective. And going into that space allows us to then recognize that that internal essence of who we are is something we have separated from and excluded within ourselves. So the conflict often starts from within, and then it filters out and it lands in our external through our projections. And so fascinating, because we could take all these different facets and really work them so that actually we find, how do we make sense? How do we make sense of this moment that we are living subjectively that then affects the collective? And I think those are the areas that, of course, in Path of Love, we really focus on.
Yes. Yes, and I think that's it's the entry point, to look at how am I living my life actually, and what are to be in some way pragmatic about it. Like, how am I relating with people? Where do I create negativity? And where am I creating conflict around me? Where am I attracting conflict? Because somehow I sense that then gives me a point of direction where I create separation, or I experience myself in separation. And then how that plays out. And I think that's in some way you could say the first step of the work is identifying in many ways. It's like, otherwise I'm quite feeling like, wow, it's so much separation in the world. It's so overwhelming. What can I do about it? It feels like I can touch that place of impotency, feeling of I can't do something. But actually, when I start to bring it back to my micro world that I live in, and I start seeing how I'm relating with my partner, how I relate with my son, my colleagues, what is actually being triggered in me, how I deal with conflicts inside myself, and I start seeing a microcosm of the world. And it springs back a certain empowerment where I can start identifying, how do I participate in separation? And therefore, I can process that like we do in Path of Love. We can identify that, but then we have a journey with that, which then brings us back to a sense of integration, a sense of, okay, I can revisit that place in me where I disconnect, and it takes me into something essential within myself. And it reminds me, of course, of my own journey. I was born in London, but I grew up in the States, and then I lived in Australia and in India, and then back in the States, and then a long time in Sweden. Now I'm in Brazil, and I live my life with a feeling of I don't have a home, like disconnected from roots. It's like a constant, it's somehow part of my journey on this planet is that feeling of, even though I can make a home where my family is, but an undercurrent, there's that feeling of I don't really belong to like a nationality. Or someone asks me who I am, where am I from? And I usually say I'm from the States, but it's the feeling inside me is not so. I don't feel that that's true. And it's so interesting to feel, in one way, that gives a freedom in some way. And in one way, it's like not having the earth as your uh this is my roots, you know.
Totally. And one of the things that you're saying, I think, is the beginning of course, identification, but it's also the movement towards personal responsibility. It's like an ownership to recognize that actually there is an inner conflict within me. Because one of my beliefs is that we all have an inner conflict because we've had to disconnect from who we essentially are, because actually that wasn't fully welcomed. And so that part of really recognizing ownership means that we have to then stand in an uncomfortable position. And we spoke earlier about that counterintuitive aspect, which is everything we know, because you could have traveled to all these different countries and continued. And on some level, on a superficial level, it's beautiful, it's glamorous. And actually, it gives you a certain kind of prestige or status. But actually, it still is driven by an undercurrent of just not feeling at home. And I can relate to that in terms of, I grew up in the northeast of England. My father's African. I was kind of 6 foot when I was 10. And all my colleagues, my little playmates were like really like kind of at my chest. And I have this, it's like I stand out. I have a different color skin, I have a different height. What am I doing? I speak differently. It's like, wow, what is this? And I remember going to Africa in summer holidays and thinking, too black, coming to England thinking too white. And I navigated and gravitated to Greece, and I lived there for a long time, 9, 10 years, to actually experience there. They had a similar color skin. It made me feel for a certain period of time like, oh, this is my place. I get these people. But still, there was that underlying nagging of homesickness. And it was only through the ownership of recognizing that actually, no matter where I am, if I don't deal with that longing, that heartbreak, that kind of real deep homesickness of the heart, then that pain of separation or exclusion will play out wherever I go. And I'll see it in others. And that's what I recognize, of course. In relationship, that's what we do. If we don't have the satisfaction here, that sense of embodied, I'm at home with myself, I'm comfortable in my skin, then we see in the other all the problems. We project that it's because my partner isn't good enough. He doesn't like the same things as me. He actually isn't into what I'm into. And because of that, I'm unhappy, or I don't have a place, or he's not the right person for me. And all of those projections and shaming and blaming is part of our culture. That's what we swim in. And so it takes a lot of courage to come back to a place of, let me own what I am actually playing out here. Let me own my perspective in this and really stop for a minute and really look at the pain that I'm in, that I'm projecting outward and externalizing because it's too much to bear.
And it's challenging to do that.
Right.
The surge driving force and the need to belong is so powerful inside us. It is so essential. I mean, from young, without belonging and bonding, we were not surviving here. So it's such a driving force. And at the same time, when I look to the world today, I can see it's like there's a tendency, in order to belong, I have to exclude. There's like, in order to, okay, I belong to a football team, or maybe whatever it is, like I can identify with a football team, for example, but then I need an enemy football team in order to bond us here. Or you can see in the war, it's like, okay, then there's war there. So I identify with one side in the war. And then I have a sense of belonging. I have a sense of community there. But we also dependent on the enemy on the other side of the war in order to feel like we belong. And I think that's something that we deal with on a global scale, but almost on a micro scale, like in how that plays out in the family, where there's a bond between a father and a daughter, and then the mother takes a position against, and there's that feeling of separation. And the more that I bond with one person in my family, the exclusion is needed in order to feel the closeness. And on the surface, that it's like becomes a vicious circle of separation. And I think that that's something so powerful because there's so much energy in that exchange of belonging and the need of separate. You can see how kids in school, the bullying and how it happens and plays out in the especially in adolescence, when they start becoming more independent and we start then clicking socially together. And then the need of belonging to the social group, but in order that there's always someone who's excluded, which somehow makes the bond of the group stronger. And so in some way, how the relationship between the pain of separation and the need and nurturance of the bonding have a relationship together. They're on a horizontal plane. There seems to be they one and needs the other. If I belong, I exclude. If I exclude, there's the essence of, even like you're saying, belonging within the exclusion. There's somehow there's a horizontal dimension of it, which it's almost a type, if I repeat myself, like a relationship there. And I think that in Path of Love, the way that we work with that inside ourselves, there's another element that comes in where we can identify how that plays out on both sides, the victim perpetrator, the differences of all of the polarization that happens from a list that we could go through, but more importantly, is an entry point to return to actually what is underneath that relationship, and how our personality, anyway, how, like we were saying before, the necessity of feeling the pain that's there, and even the nourishment of resource of the belonging. And when we allow to feel both sides inside us, and can it not just as a thought, but actually a felt sense experience, that I have the feeling of belonging because I see that this group of people sees me and that I'm welcome here. And maybe the first time in my life I feel safe, which opens something in the nervous system of social engagement. We would call that in the science part of it, but that therefore something opens to feel again, that then invites the pain of separation to be actually felt and embraced and held, which creates an alchemy in our internal system, which then brings us to this, let's say, the meaningful pain of separation, not the story that I remember that my parents divorced when I was 8, and therefore I'm sensitive to be abandoned in my relationships. Let's say that's the story I tell myself. But coming back to the meaning that maybe that point of separation was something that I don't recall in my memory of my story, and therefore I can never get free from it. But then when I go into the feeling, I engage that felt sense intelligence of the body, that capacity to feel the body where it's archived, that essential memory. It takes me back there, and I have reconnection to the points where the rupture happened. And that is something important to document, how that alchemy works. And I think we say path of love is a name, but within that container, that alchemy is happening to so many people simultaneously. It creates something important for humanity to understand. It's like our birthright to reconnect from the traumas that took us away from that is the same way we get back into it.
Absolutely. You know, I get so excited with all of that's what happens with us. There's a passionate part of me that could kind of pick those different facets there. But the thing that comes is something that I find incredibly important, which is back in the family environment itself. And as these little, essential, innocent, pure beings that we are, one of the things I follow and I know inside of myself is that kids are so vigilant and open and essentially brilliant. And they can sense and smell on that visceral level exactly the atmosphere of the home environment. So you know when your mom is unwell. You know when your father is angry. You sense when together there is friction between them. And your whole being vibrates with the discord and the discomfort. And one of the things that I watch in myself, in the people that I work with, is that in order to preserve that innocence, we will do anything, and we hide it, we disconnect from it, we really push it down, and we monitor what is required in the family environment, and we become that. If our mom needs us to be strong, then we're capable of being strong. If we're to have no needs, so there's no more overwhelm, no more problems presented, we get rid of our needs, desires, anything that creates more upheaval in the family environment, or sometimes actually you become the clown and you make the chaos, depending on what you're recognizing the family environment requires. How brilliant is that? But in doing that, we recognize that we forfeit our own essential qualities, our own essential expression. And like you're saying, something gets blocked, traumatized, frozen, whatever the event is. Let's say if it's an overwhelming event, then there's trauma. And then we have pockets of frozen, unlived experiences. And we become, and we have a loyalty, we become what the family needs us to become. And we actually create a contract. I will never have needs. I will never be happier than my mother is. I will never be more successful than my father is. Whatever, these are basic contracts, but we create a pact inside. And I watch that as being a hidden, a hidden limiting belief. And then we build on top of that mechanisms and strategies to navigate life. And we forget, and as we go and we grow, that part, that pocket of our being, which carries our creativity, our wisdom, our essence, our beauty, our freedom, is lost. And we go with these different strategies and behavioral patterns and thoughts, and we create a whole life striving and driving ourselves to get away, never to feel the pain of what we've had to block and cut off. And then we create this incredible comfort zone. And then we get to a point in adulthood where we're asking ourselves, why am I repeating these patterns? Why am I doing something that is so incredibly painful? And I spoke with someone today, it's because it's easy, it's familiar. It's something that is familiar, but it's painful. And so it takes so much courage to want to then look at that pain, to go to where you were just talking about, which is a pocket a visceral understanding that is frozen and is intelligently packed away in order to really allow ourselves to feel. You know, some people say, well, what do I do once I find this pocket of overwhelm, of unbearable powerlessness? And we say, feel to heal, but that's just so cliche, right? But what we really are doing and what is open in Path of Love is that, yes, we feel and we're witnessed. We're not talking around it. We're not talking about the story or the narrative anymore. We're going into the direct experience of it. And in that direct experience, we unlock the frozenness. And in Path of Love, you're witnessed and held in that space. And being witnessed and held in that space allows those unlived, unspoken contracts that you have known intelligent kind of everyday memory of, but all of a sudden fills your being. And then you free and you have an access to space and to memories and to something infinite, the essence of who we are. And that is like so valuable because having kind of gone through, I'm worthless for whatever the contract is, to find that, hang on a second, that was a lie, because underneath is what you were pointing to before. Underneath my hidden contracts, my conceptual beliefs, is something that is just unique and specific to me. And
Right.
even we have that universality of feeling like we have this pain of separation and we feel excluded. It's unique. When I go inside myself, what is exclusion? For me, it's specific to my experience, as it is for each other person. And holding the space to be able to navigate and to go into that direct experience is why we're facing the pain of exclusion. Yeah.
Right. Right. And it's interesting how you put it, because in some way, I think the people that I work with also, we have a tendency to see the wheels of repetition of our patterns as something negative. But I really see that actually as a certain intelligence inside us, which is actually understanding beyond our logic that the pain that is created in the repetition is actually giving us a chance for the entry point to come again. But we don't have the education, let's say, in our society in this right way of emotional intelligence probably would give us that peace of understanding that when we visit the pain again, where the entry point is, that we can actually then the breakthrough comes. And I think when it was reminding me how it happens in Path of Love, where you're being seen in some way, the environment there is creating a situation where the unmet need, maybe that was to be seen, maybe that was to be understood, maybe it was to be heard, maybe it was to express authentic feeling and not wearing some role mask that you had to survive in the family. That is being identified and therefore embodied and given by a group of people also, that creates that alchemy of, it's almost like the body smells oh, that is what I missed. That was why I created this personality. This is why I created this dynamic of getting attention in my relationships or acting out and destroying and sabotaging relationships, because this part was trying to communicate and get that right. And when it smells that, it opens up that process of returning to that. When the pain comes around again, it's then met with the alchemy of the unmet need, and that which creates the magic. That's what creates that what we say in the we can kind of feel it in the air, you know. It's like when people start just returning to that embodied sense of self, really, where people feel like this is me, this is who I am, and I feel like I'm in my authenticity for the first time in life, and I'm being seen in that, and I'm flowing in this, and it's like, God, this feels so good. And until we get that, life somehow brings again and again the circle of suffering as a way to try to, okay, this time maybe it's like I see the kind of the invisible, it sounds maybe a bit weird, but the invisible mystics of life, if that exists, kind of saying, okay, I'm going to give you one more shot. Let's see if you're going to get this. Okay, you didn't, no problem. We could wait eternity. We'll do it again until these patterns just go, okay. And this is why I working with people and saying, if we look at the pattern as not something we need to get rid of, we don't need to fix you. You don't need to be fixed. It's that something in your intelligence is doing this pattern so that you find your entry point. And that, I think, shifts therapy to something respectful to the being level. I don't want to even, I'm cautious to word the word sacred or spiritual, because that's just a word. It's like somehow that horizontal therapeutic approach of different modalities that you might go to, family constellation, trauma work, primal or something, that are, let's say, horizontal healing modalities, where all of a sudden something else is coming into the alchemy. And I think that that's what gives us the result with people in this work. And this is why I say it's like so important to document this. This is why I enjoy to talk about it, because to try to cognize with words what we're actually witnessing and experiencing with people, and what is our potential as humanity when we're looking at this mass scale, a scale of separation that we're dealing with all together on this planet, and seeing that, wow, but inside all of us is this capacity actually of returning to an essential connection again, which seems to be a doorway to something important here, no?
For sure. You know, as you're speaking, it's that part which is for us the turning point in Path of Love, where we drop into something very sacred, very special, but what are the words without doing the cliche? It's like there's an embodiment where there is an essential knowing. And for me, there is real intelligence in recognizing what is in the absence. What is it that actually is not being said? What is it that is actually not being felt? And in Africa, we have this kind of saying, which is, it is in the cracks that you will find the magic. And it's almost like it's the cracks where we don't look. It's the cracks that we don't want to experience. But the cracks are actually uncontaminated in one sense, because they haven't kind of taken all the conditioning. They're the cracks, the ugly parts, are the parts that no one looks at. But actually in that place, if we have enough tolerance, capacity, courage to stay with not knowing in the absence, that is when I feel the mystery appears. It is those repetitive patterns that after a while exhaust us, so that there's nothing else to do except to say, okay, enough already. How many more times? And that is where I feel surrender takes you. You can't do surrender. But it's that amount of times that you've gone around the roundabout, and here we are again, and here we are again, until you're so exhausted and sick of the regurgitations and the repetitive patterns that it's boring. And you sit with the boredom, and you sit with the exhaustiveness, and you sit with that pain of being exhausted by your actions and doing, because we're all a culture of doing. We're all used to, okay, let's make it better, then let's take the next course, let's upgrade myself, let's learn the next skill. But in actual fact, there's a turning point in Path of Love where it just takes you. And there are no more skills or no more technical meditations or modalities to learn. You just got you. And all of a sudden, I know this in myself. I'm taken by the guru inside me, by is that God, is that existence, is that nature, is that an intelligence, is it my heart, is it my gut, is it all of them aligning? And I really do feel it's like ting, 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 ting. They just align. Three intelligence and then the spiritual aspect, the essence, my specific expression in this vessel. And having the space to explore that, having come through the hard bits of the tears and the grind and the anger and the rage and the taboo, I think that's what I also love. It's like kind of the places that we're not supposed to look, where I'm talking about the cracks, the anger and the rage and the things that are excluded or have actually been the elements that you're told are wrong or bad. Actually, we open up and we look at those polarities and it's both and coming back to that ding, 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 and all of the intelligences that can align, allow for that expansion to happen. But in the expansion, of course, there's also the contraction. So I think what we're doing is developing in a language which sometimes is nonverbal, which takes us out of polarity and allows an embrace of the whole, so that we've been taught is right or wrong actually dissolves into it just is. And that's the moment for me that I can experience existence, or just an internal deep knowing that no one can tell me any different because I am experiencing it's a substance. Yeah.
So nicely articulated. I think that is such a nice entry point, that which is unspoken and which was unincluded, and I think in some way our personality is like almost we live with blinders on, and then what has become taboo or what was judged because it was unacceptable, when it's included again, somehow becomes an expansion of freedom and allowance, and our spontaneity then seems to come back through those cracks that you're talking about. It's like so beautiful. I just think I was just here like 20 minutes more, and I just wonder if anybody has any comments or questions, or um, wants us to address anything. Please to feel welcome to send your question in the chat, and we can see if we can respond with the time we have left. If not, it's also no problem. But just to give that opportunity for anybody who wants to add some flavor into the cooking pot here.
And that might be that you put a little piece because you've done Path of Love and how it kind of has impacted you. The reason we wanted to do the live is to really address our community. And there are more and more beautiful programs that are coming that will actually allow us to keep doing this work, because both Talib and I probably can speak for Talib, but for me, definitely the passion for actually finding out and taking ownership of who we truly are in a world that we live in right now, with exclusion and separation and pain and violence and chaos all over the place, is essential. It really is. And of course, I'm biased, but Path of Love is an environment that really injects something really special that you take away. And that then you are, as they say, the drops in the ocean that really kind of make the difference, I feel. So this live was really to open that up for those who have done it, and for those who also want to join us. Talib and I will run Path of Love in UK in Broughton Sanctuaries, which is an amazing place, in March, where all the rabbits are getting themselves ready to jump into spring. So you're so very welcome to ask questions, to be a part of our community, and yeah, bring your unique selves.
We have some here questions coming in, so it's wonderful. The first one was, are you doing any retreats with young adults, 16 years old? In this moment, we require 18 years old to participate in the path of love. They need to be legally an adult. We don't have any programs for adolescents as of right now, which is so essential to do. It's something, a passion of mine, actually, to, because my son is growing and will be coming into that phase of life himself, and to see how we can develop programs for adolescents, because to have something in the rites of passage phase of our development for young people, the world would be a different place if we had that. I mean, so many people are not supported in that transition and not given an experience of their capacity young enough. So thank you for asking that. But in this moment, we don't. But the 2 more years, yes, by 18. Are you seeing the questions there, Abby?
I do. It seems to me that there's a lot of self-sabotage and self-exclusion. So dealing with exclusion from within is key to dealing with the pain of exclusion we feel from outside. Absolutely. That's what we were addressing initially in the beginning, that actually that exclusion that we feel from within in the form of conflict or internal separation or internal dissatisfaction, or unworthiness or collapse or victimhood or inflation, whatever it is, will of course seep out into the external world. And so I really believe that inner work is essential. We have to start from within. I see so many of us, and hey, hands up, we become therapists because we feel we can help those outside. But actually, without coming and recognizing the wounded healer, for example, from within, then actually there's only so much you can do, because actually you spread that is unhealed within externally. So I have to say, in the path of love, as leaders, we are continuously doing our work, because actually every single moment, and it's a lifestyle, I say that quite often, and it is for the rest of your life. Continuously, you are looking at layers and layers. And so it's actually a way of meeting yourself and learning about yourself. So absolutely, you got to find your own inner saboteur and watch what drives him or her.
Yeah. There's another one here. Are you then supposed to accept exclusion in the end, or at least be ready to, or try to find new tribes that fit the deeper version of yourself? It's a beautiful inquiry there, because in some way, yeah, I think it's helped me to find somehow a sense of family, of like-minded people on the planet that I can feel I belong to. And then in somehow that brings a certain comfort, and it can be very healing in many ways. But then I think journey continues though in a deeper way, because even when we find the tribe that connects us, a community that connects us, we will still face the human, what is the right word? Purposeful, inevitable point of exclusion. And I think that that's something that in some way is not even, I look at it today, is not even wrong, because we can try to find belonging to avoid the pain of exclusion, but then we end up finding the pain of exclusion because it's part of belonging. It comes together. And that is somehow the alchemy of it, that still when I find my tribe, I will still relate with other humans and find myself in separation. And that the work then forces me to go deeper, that then we really see that separation is something internal, not just from our external community. And that's where it becomes super liberating, I would say, because then in some way, yes, our external communities are important, and then it brings meaning of life because we are relational beings, but there's an internal connection that we all have our birthright to, that also comes through the pain of separation. So in some way, that pain of separation, if we could just reframe it in a way of not something dangerous and bad, but as an entry point, I think it takes the edge off of it and makes us curious about it rather than repulsed by it in a way. If that makes sense.
Liz mentions the power of recognizing the repeating patterns. And I think the point that she's bringing here is true for many of us. We get it on an intellectual level, and we question it, and then we get pulled into this stream of, but why? I've done so much work. I understand it, I get it, but that's one intelligence, right? And actually recognizing, oh, here I am, I'm choosing the same men, or here I am, I'm miserable, or here I am, I'm making myself super small, or here I am, I'm in the same horrible job, and actually I'm not making money. It's like all of a sudden we get to see that those repetitive patterns, the story doesn't matter. What really matters is, do you feel the pain that the repetitive patterns bring, the exclusion, the isolation, not what pain is. I was thinking, actually, when you use the word pain, it's just a concept. What does it actually mean? For you, pain is one thing, for me, pain is another. But in your visceral being, what does it feel like, and how can you stand still to let pain really take you? That really hurts when, again, I'm being forced to look at a painful repetitive pattern that I feel stuck. Okay, so what's it like to feel stuck? Actually, it's rigid. It feels really blocked inside. And what's that block like? Actually, it's super dense. And it reminds me of this absolute terrible experience when actually I just shrunk when I was in a situation that was overwhelming. And it starts to open things up, and then the confusion comes, and then you stay with the confusion. And the actual opportunity to inquire takes you deep into the direct experience of it. So that repetitive pattern then starts to make sense in your heart. Oh, it hurts my heart because actually I had to close my heart, and there's a tightness and there's a denseness. And when you actually then give yourself what you really needed, which was someone to come and say, whoa, that's painful. And actually, what you're feeling in your heart is really immense. No one was there. So we dealt with it on our own, and we closed it up in another form of exclusion. And then there's an intuition in our belly that said, hey, this can't be right. And then you're doing it again and again. You ignore the intuition. So then the intuition gets pissed off with you, and that starts to hide and close itself down. But when we start to create that space to really drop in, the heart opens and says, oof, and it cries and it brings grief. And then in that place, you get to actually feel your tears. And then all of a sudden, your intuition comes online. And then you realize you actually heard the voice inside that told you no, but you didn't listen to it. And so actually, you start to open up on this visceral cellular level, and the nervous system starts to relax, and that expansion comes. And so you take yourself out of the intellectual understanding, which makes us fairly clever and sometimes inflated and arrogant, right, to a place of, oh, actually, I have a heart. There's a vulnerability here. I can feel the softness. I know what it's like to come home. And that homesickness of the heart is like, it has such pearls in it. And of course the intuition, which just has its own intelligence and its own knowing. So that idea of really staying with the repetitive pattern from an internal space opens the unlived, unspoken patterns that have really held us in a real isolated space.
I have just on that note, there's a beautiful testimony here from Natasha. I just wanted to read to everybody here because it touched me, and it just matches what you were just saying in some ways. She says, I did different retreats before, but never one that was as amazing as Path of Love. I was never able to fall asleep when my boyfriend would go out with his boys. Not that I thought he would do something, but I was just not able to fall asleep until he was home. I had the same I had the same problem throughout my life with previous boyfriends, but Path of Love changed that for me. Now I sleep like a baby when he goes out at night with his boys. I feel peaceful since Path of Love, still 4 years later. I love that because it's really the what we're talking about, where we can identify a pattern that plays out maybe through cycles of relationships, and all of a sudden the nervous system integrates something which just shifts. There's something relaxes, and that the trigger point that we enter all of a sudden shifts because it doesn't need to repeat anymore because we entered, and then like it evaporates from our life. I love that. It's a great example. Thank you so much for sharing that, Natasha. I really love that.
Really beautiful. And that's where words just don't quite cut it, right? Because
Yeah,
that's how.
really, it's something to it's the joy of facing the challenge of trying to articulate something that can only be felt and not spoken. And I think that's something of the secrecy in a way, or the intimacy that happens in when we work with ourselves in that way, that somehow when we go into our deepest sense of self, it cannot be spoken. It just is like there's a knowing among fellow people who've done the work, where you look at, you said, wow, you've done Path of Love, or you've done that work, or you've done, I know what you know. There's like that feeling of just like, and I think that's what creates the community feeling, like, oh, I know you've done what, yeah, yeah, okay,
That's,
like you know what I'm talking about.
that's when silence becomes sexy, no?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Silence becomes sexy. I like that.
Exactly. Oh,
Uh,
I'm just maybe I read one more.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I've been so scared of exclusion from others that I ended up excluding myself. This is from Nohad. Now I'm realizing that by avoiding the pain, I'm becoming more and more excluded from myself. So it becomes harder and harder for me to feel the feelings. I've been avoiding myself for months. I really need to do Path of Love with you guys. Yeah, you do. But that is so what happens, right? That actually there is something about protecting ourselves from others because there's this deep feeling that we're just going to be hurt, rejected, abandoned all over again. That essential core place inside of us will be hurt. So I'm going to protect myself. And in protecting myself, I actually stop myself from feeling that pain. And therefore, I'm actually isolating myself from others and from myself, and then I'm in limbo. It's such a painful, isolated place, and I think he speaks for so many, because actually out in the world, especially in the UK, it is off the map how many people are alone and isolated, and then depressed, and then anxiety sets in, and all the disorders. It's a crisis. It's an epidemic out there. And it really is this place of loneliness and aloneness without awareness, because we're not we are looking at aloneness and exclusion and isolation as being an incredible opportunity for expansion, but actually it does need some courage, awareness, and the community to hold that, and the willingness to want to go there. And sometimes after so many years of protecting and excluding, we get lost. We get lost.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, yeah, I hear you, Nohad.
And it touches me what you write, Nohad, also, because it's some also just that is the first step is what you write. It is the identifying. It's like, oh yeah, that's it's me, and there's other people that are speaking this, it resonates something inside you, and I think that's what we call the longing, and it's like that you hear the words, something that you can smell it. There's a certain fragrance of the longing picks up that, okay, this is the direction to come out of this isolation, and we could go on and on for hours, I think. Avi, and we have
Uh,
just
just really
a
want to
minute
become a
more.
true.
So
Yeah.
I put here, we are going to just looking at you guys all putting where many of you who have participated in the path of love and all of the places and dates, and it's wonderful to see all of your names and my faces that appear in my mind when I see your name. So beautiful. And we will put here a link if you would like to know more about in the UK in March with us, to come join us to get more information. If you want to talk more with us privately, we also have a 1 hour call that we do with everybody who is coming to participate, which is a lovely way to connect with us also. So the link has been put in the chat here, and you're welcome to fill in your information so we can contact you and speak more. And really, thank you guys all for visiting us and hanging out with us for an hour. And what a joy. And Avi, I just love you.
Yeah,
So
you too. I see you super soon in a few days, eh?
Portugal,
Yeah.
Yahoo.
So much love to all you beautiful people. And I really hope to see you all on the path at some point in some form super soon.
Yes,
Sending so much love.
guys, much love to you all. Take care.